Now, Dorothy, you are being consumed by objects. How is that table coming along?
Oh, this table is crazy, but the Magic Ecsite mailbox also. It just gave me some plastic pieces of molecular models. You know, it's very handy for people in need of chemistry to have some of that at home. I have this blue liquid, but I really don't know what it is, and I don't want to know what it is. And I have a new hedgehog to present to the community. Look at him, he's so cute. He's very different from the other one. Here is a cultural and intellectual hedgehog made in a book. So maybe he's going to tell a story to the first one.
You and your hedgehogs. Now, Dorothy, I've been keeping an eye on Twitter, and we have some really lovely comments that have come through. Ainsling has said, fascinating discussion at Ecsite with Nicolas Nova, Michael John Gorman from Biotopia, Marie Hobson from NHM London, with loads of food for thought and on the future of museums and the link between health and environment. Brilliantly moderated by Miko. Also, JRA, making art with light and shadows during kitchen table tinkering with the Maker Ecsite group is Ecsite is one creative community, and we love the interactive conference sessions. And then Camilla says, so Camilla looks like she has been in one of the Hangouts, and she says, just one of the many interesting chats on Ecsite Online, really disappointed to not be in Slovenia meeting people face to face, but congratulations to the whole Ecsite team who pulled this amazing virtual day off today and kept all of our carbon footprints down.
So for our next session, Brad, I think you are moving from my co-host to a convener. What's going on? Please explain yourself, Brad.
Absolutely. As we all know, we are living through a really challenging period, and many of our museums and science centres are being hit hard. And whilst a lot of people are talking about how to reopen and how to create a completely new operation that supports a safe visit, I really wanted to have a conversation around our business models and how vulnerable and compromised they are right now. So I thought I'd go from silly, friendly co-host Brad to sort of somewhat serious Brad.
Oh yes. I'm very surprised. Well, I look forward to hearing all about it. So Brad, over to you.
Bye, Dorothy.
Bye, see you later.
So, the future of business models. As we all know, our sector is pretty diverse, and whilst many of us are museums and science centres, we are also a ton of independent businesses and freelancers. And as such, we rely on a number of different business models to survive. Some of us are government or city funded. Many of us require some form of sponsorship, individual donors, membership schemes, and grants. And pretty much all of us are reliant on generating our own income, which for museums in particular, we do through ticketing, retail, catering, and other trading activities. Now, to draw an accurate picture, most of us don't rely on just one of these income streams. In fact, we really draw on a mix of all of them in order to cover costs and survive. It's also important to note that we are in the business of people. Our organizations thrive when they are full of visitors, buying tickets at our door, exploring our temporary blockbuster exhibitions, or spending money in our shops and cafes. And when these people aren't able to come, or might not be able to come back for a while, then we are in trouble. I think it's fair to say that COVID-19 has really tested the viability of almost all of our funding models. And for many of us, our immediate and long-term future and survival is not great. In America, where the majority of museums receive little government funding, the picture is bleak. Here's just one example. the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, the oldest US scientific institution west of the Mississippi, has just projected a revenue decrease of about $12 million, or 36% in the upcoming fiscal year. Heavily reliant on ticket sales being closed and with limited audience numbers returning, coronavirus has severely affected them. Now, despite receiving $8 million in relief funding through a federal scheme, their executive director, Dr. Scott Sampson, detailed the dire outlook for the institution that has been closed to the public since the 12th of March. And as such, he has announced layoffs, furloughs, and pay cuts that are going to affect 75% of staff. Scary stuff, but I think it makes a discussion on business models all the more important and relevant. So in this session, we will hear from 4 organizations across Europe. I've asked each to tell us a little bit about their organization and what we are calling their historical income sources. This should provide useful context before I will then invite everyone back to the screen to discuss the future of business models. As always, if you have a question, then please put it in the Q&A function below, and we will try and come to the most popular towards the end. So let's begin at my organization, the Natural History Museum in London. First of all, it's a national museum, which means we are funded directly by central government. National museums are generally larger institutions that hold collections considered to be of major importance, and all national museums in the UK offer free entry to their permanent collections. As such, at the NHM, we see around 5 million visitors each year in our buildings and around 20 million each year through our digital activities. And I should say we have a staff of around about 900. In terms of income, this normally sits around £86 million per year. Government funding makes up around 50% of this figure, with another 25 coming from our commercial trading activities. And the rest come through fundraising, special exhibitions, grants, etc. Now, in relation to many of our friends in the UK and across the world, I think it's fair to say we're in a pretty privileged position, being largely government funded, but a few things to note. Funding from government for national museums has reduced in real terms by about 30% since 2010. To compensate, we have really strengthened our commercial income generation, building up the workforce, infrastructure, and expertise to generate profitable and sustainable income streams in order to maintain operating expenditure. I think it's fair to say COVID-19 has shown how vulnerable to reduced commercial income the current business model for national museums has become. Whilst the COVID-19 lockdown has made this a stark reality, the resumption of business with reduced attendance and diminished other income-generating activities is likely to result in significant income reduction for an extended period. And point number 2, national museums were discouraged from building reserves until 2010, when a series of new freedoms from the Treasury rules were applied. So although national museums carry reserves, the size of monthly losses currently being incurred will result in those being exhausted in their entirety in a number of months. So, on to our second speaker. I would like to invite Camilla from the Museum of Science and Technology of Leonardo da Vinci in Milan to join us. Camilla, how are you?
Thank you, Brad. I'm fine. I'm not calling from a Star Trek ship. I'm sitting right here in Milan, so my carbon footprint is close to zero.
Camilla, why don't you tell me just a little bit about your museum and that business model?
Right, so for those who were not at Ecsite 2009, which was hosted by us here in Milan, the National Museum of Science and Technology Leonardo da Vinci is a 50,000 square meter collection-based museum with about 500,000 visitors per year, a little bit higher than that, and about 100 staff members, so a different dimension from from your institution, of course. We have a busy schedule of public events and talks and permanent and temporary exhibitions and a very large-scale educational department, which develops continuously projects and programs at a European scale and national scale, and 14 different thematic interactive labs that work at a high rate with schools and visitors and families. So the museum was founded in Milan in 1953 as a national public museum, and it was transformed in a private foundation participated by public institutions in 2000. So this slowly moved the institution from being a 100% publicly funded body to a non-profit organization adopting a managerial skill business model founded, as you said before, on the mix of income sources. Last year's budget was actually significantly higher than the previous. We had a 19 million budget, and it was an 11 million budget in 2018. We had a core development project which boosted up this this number. But I would like to talk a little bit about our income streams. We currently generate over 80% of our annual budget. So 17% is collectively made up of the subsidies from the foundation's members. So the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Culture, the Region of Lombardy, and the Municipality of Milan, and the Milan Chamber of Commerce. So all public or semi-public entities. 16% of our income comes from ticketing, and 5% comes from educational activities. So activities directly directed to schools and groups. Then a percentage that varies between years, from year to year, between 9 and 20% can be attributed to venue hire operations. So quite a big percentage there. And between 25 and 50% yearly is ascribed to grants, both from public bodies and foundations, and to private partnerships. So now I don't think there is the need to describe, you've already done that, how COVID-19 has eroded the income from ticketing, from educational activities for schools, from venue rental. And so I think at this point, I might leave the screen to our next speaker, Joanna, and then come back to you for the panel session.
Thanks so much, Camilla. That's great. So now to our next speaker, Joanna, who is the Director of Development at the Copernicus Science Center in Warsaw. So Joanna, come on in. Hey, Joanna, how are you?
Hey, Brad. I'm cool. It's cold here. It's like 14 degrees in Poland. So,
Joanna, why don't you tell us a little bit about your museum and that business model?
of course. So I am the development director in the Copernicus Science Center in Poland, in Warsaw. We are a typical science center full of interactive exhibits. And we are, as you said about the National History Museum in London, we are privileged in the sense that we are the biggest science center in Poland, and we are the most popular one. We have around 1 million visitors every year. At least we had so far, because we don't know what's going to happen next. We've just reopened yesterday. And we are therefore very dependent on the ticketing. As Camilla said, and as you said, this is something that we use a lot as our income source. But our main income source, of course, is a public donation from our organizers, who are the Ministry of Science, Ministry of Education, and the City of Warsaw. Ticketing is around 35% of our yearly budget, but we also have substantial income from space rentals, of course, and sponsorships. So those are our main sources of income, and then it has been like that since we opened. In total, we make yearly around 14 million euros, and our income is equal to our expenditure because we are working on a non-profit basis. So this is more or less the picture in which we are. And of course, our business model has been highly compromised by this situation. We have huge financial problems, and we are looking for ways to solve it with new ideas and with new directions, actually.
Thank you so much, Joanna. That is really super interesting. We're going to bring on our final speaker, who is Andreas. Now, Andreas is the CEO of Dialogue Social Enterprise and the receiver of the 2017 Ecsite Mariano Gargo Award. So, Andreas, come on in and tell me, how are you? Hey, Andreas, how's it going?
Hi, hello.
It's so great to have you here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your organization and your business model?
Yes, well, with pleasure. Well, I think we are a little bit a different organization because we are a social enterprise, totally privately owned, and we have, let's say, hubs around the world. Actually 33, and our main hub is in Hamburg, where we are now, let's say, working since 20 years, have around 100,000 people a year, around 100 people employed, 2/3 are blind, deaf, and old, above 70. And the reason is that we do particular exhibition, and some of you know Dialogue in the Dark, Dialogue with Time, and Dialogue in Silence. As we are not having any sort of, let's say, public money, or we are not looking for donations to cover our costs, we have a budget of around 2.7 million. Of course, COVID hits us very, very hard because now we don't have actually income, because approximately 90% we have self-earned income. That means it is a very, very a tough moment as we to keep our program running. The same situation actually happens with all our partners globally. As briefly mentioned, we have operations in 33 sites on all continents, and of course everybody is very, very threatened by COVID-19.
That is super interesting, Andreas. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite all speakers now to come back and share the platform. And whilst we're doing that, just remember, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A function below, and to upvote the one you really want answered. So hopefully, oh, here we've got Joanna, and just waiting on Camilla. Perfect. So look, the first question I wanted to come to, and it's almost just a quick response really, and it's before we dive into business models, I wanted to have a quick discussion about commercial sponsorship, because I think it's fair to say our relationship with sponsors is being challenged. Joanna, can I start with you? What is the commercial sponsorship landscape looking like both now and in the future?
We have been experiencing actually good things from sponsors. We have very good connections and relationships with them. We've known each other for 10 years, and we've been working with them since the Copernicus opened. And I think this is something that gives back now in the moment of crisis, because we have our sponsors has been very supportive, and said, we trust you, we know you're going to do a good job, so don't worry, as long as we have money, we're going to help you. But then all the negotiations we had going were stopped, and all the big money that we were seeing in our future are gone out of the window, and the companies are now saying, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, so we have no money to give you whatsoever for anything. So I think this is going to be challenging to find new sponsors, and the relationships that we've built over the years are going to be our building ground for future. But we also have to look into new opportunities. So we have to look into being agile, creating new projects that are dedicated to the expectations of those sponsors and are using online a lot. And I think we are some of the organizations that didn't use it might be looking into doing individual donors programs, because I know that you're doing this in the UK, but for example, for us, the Copernicus actually has started it as an appeal to donate, buy a virtual ticket to the Copernicus, which is nice.
Camilla, can I just come to you for a quick reaction? I know you work with sponsors a lot too. What's your quick view?
Right. So we've been working with sponsors a lot, especially on a project-based. So what Joanna was saying, we produce projects for sponsors in a way, or we connect sponsor with individual projects. We haven't been working very much on corporate sponsorship until now. But I think that we need to start thinking about creating more long-lasting relationships with some of these sponsors. And I think that, I mean, we all know that now in the economic sector, there is an increasingly growing pressure on businesses to become more attentive to the environment, the human rights, social justice, and although some companies are using these messages for marketing reasons, some are really starting to see these as key elements of their sustainable strategy. So they're key to their own survival in the market. And so these, I think, are the companies that we need to identify and work with. And they're moving some actions from the corporate social responsibility portfolio to the strategic development wallet. And we want to be in that area of connection with them. So I think this is the people we are looking for.
That's a great point. Now, look, as we have seen, as a sector, we are reliant heavily on a sort of a relatively common set of business models. And my first question is kind of brutal, but are these models dead? And I want to come to you first, Andreas. Are they dead?
Well, certainly not. I think, but what COVID shows, I think we are in a fundamental, let's say, transformation. And of course, I think we have now to rethink how we can restore, I think, our current business models. And of course, it's related with state subsidies, donations, or corporate sponsors, or whatever. Or I think we can rethink completely new. And I think all the discussions now, for me, how the future looks like, especially in terms of business, is how to say, do we have a chance to rebuild our, let's say, or to, how to say, have a renaissance of our, let's say, former, let's say, business models, or do we have the gut and have the necessity, actually, I think, to change fundamentally? And this is, of course, a very interesting debate. So it's not that, but I think we have to definitely rethink our business models fundamentally.
It's a good point. Joanna, can I come to you for a reaction?
Yeah, well, I actually think that this business model is dead for a while. I mean, for a foreseeable future, it's dead. And we really need to look into how we're going to deal with this situation. And I think the answer is somewhere in being agile and being more strategically visible, so more visible with our strategies and with our mission and our vision, because those are things that make us not only a fun place to be, but also an important social institutions that we can be and that we know we are. But publicizing it nowadays and talking about it, what we actually do and what changes in people when they interact with us is vitally important. So I think the fundraising goes hand in hand with strategy, and I think that's something we should focus on, probably. And the other thing is a question of the iron capitals that we are able to build or not within our organization. So can we have money for the future for crises like this? I know we've been talking about it, Brad, and you said about it a little bit as well.
Great point. Camilla, can I just get a quick response from you? What do you think? Are they dead, or do you kind of agree with our other panelists?
Well, maybe not dead, but certainly badly wounded. So just to link back to what Joanna was saying, I think it's key, it's strategic that we really develop a new jargon, a new way of talking about our strategies, which can really speak not only to our sponsors, but to individuals and to the public. I mean, we need to be a fundamental part of the ecosystem for social growth. And we need to say this more clearly, I think. And for example, public revenue, when we're talking about that, we must not think, I think, only in terms of direct funding from the public, but also of all that plethora of indirect funding. For example, funds that can be given and devoted, to citizens' culture bonuses, to school support funds. So, for example, why not lobby for sort of culture passes so that are paid publicly, given to citizens that could then access culture for free, but the museums would still be getting their ticketing equivalent from the state or the region or whatever other public institute. So I think we need to find hybrid models.
So, it's a really lovely point. Now, Andreas, I want to bring you in here a little bit, as I know you've been exploring some new ideas linked to economist Jurij Krpan. Maybe you could explain a little bit about his thoughts and tell us how it relates to your organization.
Yes, sure, with pleasure. I think first of all, I think as a social entrepreneur, we are, how to say, very much aware about what sort of new finance models are in place. We're working with impact investors, for instance. Then we have this method of convertible grant and convertible donations and convertible investments. That means if business runs well, a grant is changed into an investment. If the business works bad, an investment is changed into a grant. So there are some new models, how to say, in place coming from the investment, from the impact investment fund. But when you talk about Krpan, I think Krpan is for me really one of he's a prophet. He's really a thought leader. And some of you may have read the book Age of Access or the End of Work. And yeah, this is 20 years back, and it's actually reality. And he, 5 years back, he wrote a book. It's called The Zero Marginal Cost Line. And what he did was actually to understand the digital business models. And as you know, when you are a Facebook user, Google, Twitter, or whatever, you don't have to pay anything. And then the core product is actually for free. And all the surroundings, periphery, actually generates income. And to translate this model into the museums world, in the non-profit sector, in the cultural sector is, of course, very interesting. And we are trying to understand how we can actually take advantage of the very, very, of course, as we all know, very successful business model of the digital economy and try to convert it into the cultural sector. And that means we would actually write off our income. We would not have any, we would not ask for any ticketing. We would not rely on sponsors or on state funding. We would believe that our, let's say, our product, our offers are so attractive that people donate. And of course, it's building up a certain communities, because people don't spend only once, they spend over the course of their lifetime in the best case. That means it's all about customer relation and how we can be so attractive, so appealing that people giving a voluntary donation, whatever the thing is appropriate. And then of course it's up to us to build a relation while they are, let's say, on ground, or while they are somehow connected over net. That is coming, let's say, a long time relation, and then we can, of course, build up little by little a certain, let's say, donor base with micro, let's say, donations. This is the idea of the marginal cost line related to our sector.
Andreas, it's a super interesting idea. And I wonder, as somebody who is a sort of a commercial business, how have you had much luck in pushing those kind of ideas through your organization? Because it seems to me to be a pretty scary sort of leap of faith.
Yeah, well, I think, I think this is not only related to me and my organization. As everybody loves innovation, everybody hates implementation. That means as soon as it comes, I think it becomes concrete. People are literally crucifying me. Are you completely crazy? You want to write off our business model? We generate millions, and now you want to write it off? And I said, listen, but we have to. I think it's really, really complicated. And this is maybe the chance now in this particular, let's say, hyper super crisis time, that we are forced to rethink. Because what is for sure that I think that they to restore or to let's say preserve what was how to say our base in the past. This is really over, and I hope now my team understands there is really a fundamental shift is needed. Otherwise, we cannot survive. So I think we have now the unique opportunity, I think, to rethink everything from the scratch, and otherwise I think we are just, how to say, obsolete. I think this is the fact, and as nobody wants to be obsolete, I have to swallow a bitter pill, and I think to get rid of my good old days.
I want to come to both Camilla and Joanna, sort of those ideas that Andreas was kind of sharing with us. As two people who work in two science centers and museums, do you think something like that could sort of be implemented in your organizations? Joanna, can I start with you?
Well, we are struggling with change a lot, actually, and that would require a lot of work, organizational work, and discussion with our organizers. So I think, however this is amazing and inspiring, it's also facing the reality that is in front of us. So rediscussing the models and how we work, and rediscussing it not only with us but also with our political organizers, I think, is something to be the first step towards the direction of change.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I have to hang my head in shame. I have just realized that we are absolutely out of time.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to those who ask questions, but Andreas, there has been a comment. Can you repeat the name of the book that you mentioned?
I just made it. I'm, yeah.
You're an absolute star. Well, look, it just leaves me to say a huge thank you to my amazing creative and super brainy panelists tonight. You have done an amazing job, and I really appreciate that a topic like this is really hard to kill in 30 minutes. So I really, really appreciate it. So thank you to Camilla, to Joanna, and to Andreas. And I believe we are now going to magically whiz over to Dorothy. So Dorothy, over to you.